This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
What's going on, everyone? This is episode 117 of Top Rope Nation, your place for the best in pro wrestling talk. My name is Ryan Drosty of comicbook.com, joined here by Justin Joint and Kyle Ross.
Boys, I am very fired up for tonight's telecast. So fired up, I might blade on air, even though we're not even doing this on webcam.
You know what? I hear the cocktail in the background. Your mic was picking up like the jingling ice back there, and you're ready to go.
It's a stiff one.
I love scotch. I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. Here it goes down into my belly.
We got to be tight here early on.
What is it? What are you drinking, Kyle? We haven't done that in a while. What are you drinking during this broadcast?
Very standard Jack and Coke.
Oh, okay.
But it was one of those deals where I just had like a little bit of Jack left in the bottle, or what I thought was a little bit. So I just dumped the rest of it in the glass, and definitely more than I would normally put in.
Nice. Well, I have a WeldWorks Brewing Company, a double dry hopped Juicy Bits IPA that my buddy Tim, shout out Tim, brought me back from Colorado this week. Going down nice, ready to talk some Hell in a Cell with you guys. We're gonna talk in just a moment about some changes we have for the show moving forward, which is why we're already talking Hell in a Cell. But Justin Joint, how's it going across town before we get to that?
I am good. I am ready to talk some Hell in a Cell.
If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It helps out the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a written review that we can read on the air. If you're listening on Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, wherever our podcasts are found, hit that subscribe button. You'll never miss a show. You can find the whole back catalog at topropenation.com. You can find info about all three of us there. You can find links to all of our merch and ways you can support the show, including patreon.com. Guys, you can help the show grow by funding us over at patreon.com/topropenation. We have multiple tiers, which will give you exclusive benefits. We go from a $1 tier per month up to a $20 per month tier. I guess the most popular option would be the $5 a month tier that gets you access to all of our show notes every week, a little peek behind the curtain, an exclusive Top Rope Nation sticker sent to you in the mail, and access to the Patreon exclusive podcast that we do. That would be Top Rope Nation Classics, where we go back and review shows from the past, including WCW Nitro's debut from 1995, which we will be recording and releasing next week. The only way to hear that is to become a member on Patreon, as well as Top Rope Nation Extra, where we review the WWE and AEW pay-per-views within 24 hours of the end of the show. We review the shows match by match, give you our hot takes in the immediate aftermath of the shows. You can check it all out at patreon.com/topropenation. Oh, and by the way, guys, I didn't tell you this off air. We're bringing it back. It's been, it's been about 4 months since we did this. Looking to springboard that Patreon page once again. If you sign up at the $5 per month tier between now and the end of October, we will send you a free Top Rope Nation t-shirt in the mail. You'll have it in time for Thanksgiving. You will be able to show it off to all your relatives while you're enjoying football in Turkey. Guys, what an amazing benefit. Check it out. You get all those exclusive shows for 1 month. You get the free shirt in the mail. You get the free sticker. We did this back in June. Like I said, we had several people sign up. We're taking a risk here. We're sending this t-shirt. We're losing money on the proposition, but we think you'll like what we have to offer, and you'll remain a member on Patreon. And I'm happy to say that when we did this back in June, virtually every single person that signed up, actually every single person but one, is still a member here as we record this in September. So they liked it. We think you'll like it too. Check it out at patreon.com/topropenation. Kyle, I know you love doing those exclusive shows.
I do, and I love our t-shirts too. Some of the most comfortable t-shirts I own.
That's true. I was just talking to Andrew Zarian, our friend over at the Mat Men podcast. He's been a guest on our program in the past. He was actually wearing a Top Rope Nation shirt on Mat Men this past week. You can check it out on their YouTube page. He told me on Twitter, what a comfortable t-shirt. Soft style, guys. We go all in on these free t-shirts. We're not sending you these scratchy, just Gildan cotton shirts. We're upgraded to the next level soft style. You're getting that in the mail by joining our Patreon page for just $5.
Heavy shots at Blake Shelton there.
There you
It was
go.
a frickin' tool bag anyway, so fuck it, do it again.
Justin Joint, you love the classic shows. I think that's one of the favorite things you have, and that's kind of inspiring our show tonight. So, yeah. What do you think about reviewing Nitro? WCW Nitro from 95 next week for Patreon.
I'm excited. It should be interesting, to say the least.
Massive fan of Brian Pillman, as you are. I would think you're looking forward to that one, the opening match.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll look for that next week on our Patreon page. But guys, we mentioned some changes to the podcast moving forward, kind of inspired by the text thread that Justin, Kyle, and myself have going every day, every week. We're always texting back and forth. And Justin has kind of become known for sending out these just random questions to myself and Kyle throughout the day. Like, what would you do if you rebooked this show? What are your top 5 this? What are your Mount Rushmores of this? And we kind of decided, like, maybe we should just kind of change up the format of the show a little bit moving forward and feature more of these, like, topical shows where we look at, like we're going to do tonight, the Mount Rushmore of WWE Hell in a Cell matches. The Mount Rushmore, we did this in the past, of tag team specialists. I think I really like doing this. We're still gonna mix in the current product, of course. We're gonna do a news segment before we get to the topic of the week. Most weeks, if there's stuff going on, we'll do in the news first. We'll move on to topic of the week, probably at Justin's suggestion, the way this has gone in the past. And at the end of the broadcast, you can still look forward to Kyle's deep dive of the week. So, what do you guys think?
This is pretty topical, though, by the way. Obviously, with WWE 2019 Hell in a Cell just mere weeks away, believe it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like talking classic wrestling. We like talking the current product. And we kind of figured if we can come up with a topic that relates to something going on, you know, like Hell in a Cell right now, but we can still look at it and put a historical spin on it as well. It's something that's kind of fun to do. And so that's kind of how we're going to structure this thing. I guess basically Top Rope Nation moving forward, our standard shows here are going to have kind of 3 sections every week. In the news, topic of the week, and Kyle's deep dive of the week. So we're looking forward to it. We've got a calendar going between all 3 of us where we've been already talking about some of the shows we've got to do down the line. And guys, we're already booking these things into December. So we got a lot of stuff lined up for you in the weeks ahead. Some stuff I'm really looking forward to. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribe on all your podcast feeds. And
obviously, the next couple of weeks are as big as we've had really in a long time in this industry with AEW debuting. We're going to be giving instant reaction to that show Wednesday night, right after, I believe, we're recording. So you'll have our instant reaction there. Our instant reaction to the WWE draft when that happens. That's on the podcast. So a lot going on in the next couple weeks, but I am very much looking forward here to providing my hot takes on the history of the Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of that is on our schedule here as we go through October. And another one I'm really looking forward to on our show the week of October, I guess it'll be the 25th that this episode drops, just a couple of days after WWE 2K20 releases. We're going to do a retrospective look back at pro wrestling video games. Kyle will not be able to be on the broadcast that week, but I've reached out to a good friend of mine. He's a big gamer. People that follow streamers on Twitch may be familiar with him. Really looking forward to this. He's never been on the podcast before. Going to have a special guest here in about almost exactly 1 month that broadcast will be. So we're lining it all up, listeners. We got some good stuff planned for you. So with that being said, this week, in the interest of time, because I wanted to talk about the t-shirt deal, we wanted to talk about some of the changes to the structure of the show moving forward. We are going to skip the In the News segment because, to be honest, this week there's not a ton of big news out there right now, and next week there's going to be plenty to talk about current events-wise with, as Kyle mentioned, AEW's debut, the Wednesday Night Wars starting up. So this week, guys, let's take it right away to our topic of the week. It is the Mount Rushmore of WWE Hell in a Cell matches. So I was looking at our feed, our downloads and everything, and as Americans, we kind of just assume that everyone knows what Mount Rushmore is. But we do quite a few international downloads, guys. In fact, I should just pull up our stats right now, and I can tell you where some of our downloads just this month have come from in the month of September. I know the UK is always kind to us.
Should I be learning Mandarin for the? Are we going to be doing an alternate podcast? Is that something in the docket here?
Maybe. Let me pull up the list. Outside of the United States, we're being downloaded in September. In the UK, as I said, Canada, Australia, Sweden, Germany, Malta, Brazil, Thailand, Greece, Ireland. Justin, you'll be happy about that. Israel, India, Luxembourg. Wow, we got a download from Luxembourg. That is impressive. Not the biggest
Remember
country.
when Jerry Lawler used to always overreact to Luxembourg when JR would recite the places that the WWE pay-per-views were in?
Yeah. Well, if I mention your country there, guys, shout out. Keep tuning in. We appreciate your support. It's kind of mind-blowing when we're recording this thing every week to think this is going out all over the world, and you guys like listening to us. So it's humbling. Thank you for your support. But yeah, Top Rope Nation is a global phenomenon. So if you're not familiar with what Mount Rushmore is, it is literally a massive carving in the side of the Black Hills in South Dakota here in the United States, featuring the heads of 4 of America's greatest presidents: George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, and Thomas Jefferson. And so when people say the Mount Rushmore of something, we're talking like 4 of the greatest things of whatever topic it is. So tonight we are talking, in our opinion, the 4 greatest WWE Hell in a Cell matches with that pay-per-view here on the horizon. And Kyle, this is something we've kind of talked about in the past. I think this might have been back in 2016 because I think it was before Justin joined the show.
It was actually one of our first episodes I think we ever did together.
Yeah. So we just kind of assumed that there's 2 matches that all of us are probably going to have on our list. They're 2 of the most well-known and earliest, actually, the very first 2 WWE Hell in a Cell matches.
Well, first 2 on pay-per-view. I looked it up, and there was one on Raw in between.
There was.
I thought there was, and I wanted to do that. My research. There was actually, Vince Russo, everybody. They did 2 on Raw in '98 that bookended the very famous Undertaker, Mick Foley Hell in a Cell.
Okay, yeah, those are the 2 that the 2 I was talking about. So, yeah, you are right. There was one on it looks like June 15th, '98. Undertaker and Steve Austin versus Mankind and Kane, Raw's War, and then there was the King of the Ring match, the Undertaker and Mankind. So those were within 2 weeks of each other. That's pretty crazy.
And then they apparently did a Mankind and Kane in August on Raw. I did not remember the tag at all. I vaguely remembered Mankind Kane. Yeah. Spoiler alert, neither of those Raw's War ones will be on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, no, very forgettable, I think. But we wanted to kind of throw this right away to Justin to get his thoughts on this, because for me, number one, like the greatest Hell in a Cell match to me, and Kyle said this too at the time, is still the first one with The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. So I know we're going to talk top 4. But for you, Justin, I mean, are you on the same page as us, or maybe not? What do you think about that take?
I mean, absolutely. Not only is it probably the best Hell in a Cell match, I mean, it's one of the best matches in WWE history, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
A cage no one can enter. Shawn Michaels has his date with destiny. A hell no man can escape.
Undertaker, I'm gonna take you down, put you down, and bury you underneath that ring.
There's nowhere to run. There's only one way out. Nowhere to hide. And that's over my dead body. No one to stop the carnage.
You know who the hell I am?
Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Hell in a Cell. I can never Rest in peace.
WWF Bad Blood in your house live this Sunday on pay-per-view.
I have never seen anything like this in my life. This is not a pretty sight. We knew it wouldn't be. Michael has got to do what he has to do to survive. Oh, no! The hymn features of Shawn Michaels being rearranged thanks to The Undertaker. Incoming! Incoming! Michaels may be broken in half. Somebody's got to stop this, McMahon. Michaels is a bloody mess. Oh, my God!
Absolutely. Since we talked about that, Kyle, do you have any more thoughts? I know it's been 3 years, but it seemed like at the time, if I remember right, we were talking about how Taker and Mankind always gets talked about as like this great match, but it's more memorable for like the two big spots versus HBK and Taker just putting on a clinic of a cell match, and for something that was brand new at the time.
Okay, so both of them are on my Mount Rushmore. Are both of them on each of yours?
Yes.
Yes, we are smart wrestling fans.
Okay. So we've established that. Now I want to revisit the comparison between the two.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of people on our side here with this take that Taker HBK is greater than Taker Mankind as a match. I'm very firm in that belief. Listeners of this show know that a lot of times I see gray area in debate. I'm not a black and white guy. I can understand if you feel a different way. With this subject, I very much take a position that Undertaker HBK is a superior Hell in a Cell match. And Ryan, you mentioned that we kind of had a discussion 3 years ago about this, but I really wanted to revisit it because for me, it boils down to something when saying the Undertaker Michaels match is superior. And I agree, by the way, with Justin. It's not only the greatest cell match ever, it's one of the greatest matches in WWE history. There probably aren't 10 matches in WWE history I would give 5 stars to. That's one of them. So that's kind of the rarefied air it's in with me. But when comparing the two, it boils down to the notion of crescendos. And when I consume any kind of story, TV show, movie, wrestling match, I prefer the crescendo, peak of the story, to be at the end. And in the instance of Taker and Michaels, that match crescendos at the end, with Michaels escaping the cage, getting lawn darted in the side, bleeding all over the place, going up top, press slam, and his bump off the cage, oh, by the way, sports fans, pretty damn impressive in its own right, with Taker stepping on the fingers, Lawler yelling incoming. I mean, that's like an iconic moment that when it happened, it just blew your mind. Like, if you take yourself back to October of 97, you hadn't seen a bump like that before in wrestling.
Yeah.
And I also want to defend the Kane finish because there's still, I feel like, these bad take people who are like, oh, outside interference, that's minus quarter star right there. Stop it. See, to me, okay, here's the thing. That finish made perfect sense given the storyline heading into the match. And I was trying to watch this. I guess they did a kind of a mini doc with Michaels, Kane, and Taker. And it was a rare Undertaker not in character interview, which he just gave. It sounded like he was giving via phone. What was it called? Like Uncut or something? It's on the network. I started to watch it before we went on.
I don't think I've ever seen this.
I thought it was the oddest thing how it popped up in my recommended when I went on the network. I'm like, oh, fuck, we're going to talk about that tonight. But I didn't finish it. It was okay.
The WWE Network is tracking your internet usage, Kyle.
Yeah, Bruce Pritchard was a little full of himself on it, but whatever. Anyway, back to the Kane finish. It was a great finish because the storyline heading the match was HBK cost Undertaker world title. He behaved like a complete jackass on television for 2 months. And Taker makes this point in the documentary. The story of the match was Michaels was being put in this cage to get his ass handed to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what the fans wanted to see. And the only way Michaels could win this would be, I don't know, if the Undertaker's presumed to be dead half-brother happened to show up that night. What do you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine thinking Shawn Michaels should have won this match clean. Imagine having that take. giving.
I cannot imagine that. Especially the way he had, like you said, how his character was on TV at the time.
Like, it's, again, I've mentioned this before in other issues, like how we've been conditioned to think certain things aren't good. Just because whatever, like just because for years we said, and yeah, there are a lot of times when they do cheap finishes, it detracts from the match. Not here. Like, imagine if Undertaker lost clean to Shawn Michaels in this match. Like, what do we think of his character? It's like, you lost to the pussy.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
So, and that was the only way to debut Kane, too. Like, I don't know what your guys' feelings were, if you can remember. I mean, obviously, this is 22 years ago. Like, when I was watching that storyline play out on Raw for months, I was like, this seems like it's going to be bad. Like, Paul Bearer with the whole, oh, Kane's alive. It's like, oh, boy. Oh, boy, this seems like... But, a character's only got one chance to debut. And the fact that Kane is still on WWE TV 22 years later, which is probably a different podcast for a different day, tells me it was a pretty damn good debut. And Vince's whole, that's got to be Kane. Great call. Great call by the chairman. My hat's off, Vince.
Yeah, the debut didn't go off with a hitch. Like, there was the issue with the door when he came in. But, I mean, at the time, I didn't watch the pay-per-view live. I don't know about you guys. But seeing, the still shots on Raw the next night of Kane's debut, it freaking blew my mind as a 13-year-old. I thought it was the perfect way to debut him. And, yeah, I liked it. Justin, what do you recall at the time from this match?
I was like you. I didn't get to see it live. So it was kind of the excitement of the stills on Raw. But I remember going back and watching it and just being blown away. And I mean, it really is one of the most iconic matches for all the reasons you guys have laid out. The story going in, the story going out, the story in the match, Shawn Michaels, being a bump machine, the debut of Kane. It's truly iconic, whereas Undertaker Mankind just has two legendary and iconic moments.
Do you guys remember? Go ahead, Kyle, and then I'll jump.
No, sorry. No, you go ahead first.
I was going to ask you, do you guys remember when and where it was the first time you saw this match? I'll start with Justin.
I do not. And I'm even trying to remember how I would have watched pay-per-view. I think Hollywood Video here in town, released the pay-per-view. So I'm assuming I would have rented it.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I don't recall what the delay was from, it airing live to them releasing it on VHS.
This was at the tail end of the WWF Coliseum Video experience, and I recall this being an incredibly hard Coliseum Video to get a hold of.
Was it the last one?
They released Survivor Series on Coliseum Video, but I don't know about the release order. But they used to, if you remember the In Your House shows, this was In Your House Bad Blood. They were never called that on Coliseum Video. What was Canadian Stampede? They always had these weird names for it. But I do remember that this one was Rampage 97, and that was Bad Blood 97. Yeah. And it was super hard to get a hold of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember In Your House 4 and 5. Remember they combined them together into one tape because those shows aren't very good. And it was Winter Combat or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Winter Combat. Canadian Stampede was Maximum Impact 97. Yeah, I guess as far as the numbered tapes go, the number of the Coliseum Video is WF 176 for Rampage 97, which followed WF 175, which was Survivor Series 97. So yes, it may have been the last printed Coliseum Video, and I could never get a hold of it, so I started getting really into eBay around this time, and I was buying up the Coliseum Videos, and they were super high priced. And I remember this one always went really high, and I hadn't seen it, and I wasn't quite into tape trading quite yet. And somehow it was also released by WWF Home Video as Bad Blood. And that was the version I got on VHS a couple years later. And that was, I don't remember if that was an international version or if they double released it here in the US, but that was the one I had. And that was the first time I saw it. So I know it was at least a couple years later. What about you, Kyle?
It was, I want to say, early 98, maybe? It was the very first tape I bought off eBay, and I'm sure I way overpaid for it.
Yeah, if you bought it then, definitely.
A dubbed copy of a single pay-per-view. Yeah, probably paid like $20 for it. A second generation dubbed copy. But yeah, very first thing I ever bought off eBay.
Interesting. So we were doing similar things around that time period.
You know, I do want to stick up for Mick Foley here with the, because full disclosure, it's my second favorite Hell in a Cell match, Undertaker Foley. If you read Have a Nice Day, and I assume we probably all have, it's been a while for me, but this part in the book always stuck out to me when he went through his approach to the King of the Ring 98 match. And he really lets you understand why he did what he did. That match had no real storyline going in at all. It was just, you know, at the time, WWE basically had 4 main eventers: Austin, Foley, Taker, and Kane. And they just kind of mixed them up. You know, they wanted to have Taker. They couldn't have Taker and Kane work again. So it was just kind of like Taker and Mick Foley were the semi-main, just cause. Remember, WWE did not have a deep roster at all at that time. Taker was banged up, if I remember. I think he had an ankle injury going in. And Foley, he said he made 2 mistakes before that match. One was watching the Michaels Taker match, and he immediately realized, holy shit, we have no chance of topping this. So keep that in mind, sports fans. And 2, he then began talking to Terry Funk. And the 2 of them somehow, you know, in talking, convinced Mick that, what if he just got thrown off the top of the cell? And obviously we all know what happens.
Destroying the Hell in a Cell. And my God, don't get him over here where we are. What's going to happen here? Undertaker fighting back. He's fighting back. They're right above us, folks. And I don't like it a damn bit. Oh, my God. Look out. Oh, man! The God Almighty! The God Almighty! They killed him! Oh, my God. As God is my witness, he is broken in half!
Justin mentioned it before, and I kind of talked about it with crescendos. The 2 bumps Foley takes are completely insane. Probably the 2 most spectacular in the history of the industry. First is more iconic. The second's the more severe. But this match crescendos at the beginning, I guess, is probably what Justin and I are both saying. You know, after the 2 big bumps, what do you remember from the match? Basically the shot of Foley laying there in the corner with his tooth in his nose. Mm-hmm. I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure 100% that the finish is a tombstone. I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I throw out there, was this the first time that tax were ever brought into WWE?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah, I think it's definitely my second most favorite one too, because of just, it's an iconic match. I mean, you think of the Attitude Era, you think of that match. It's not as good of a wrestling match, as we said, as HBK Taker. That's a 5-star match. But this one, just for the memorable shots and the big moves, it's got to be up there. I mean, this is by far the most talked about match in Mick Foley's career.
Did you watch this live?
I did not. I saw it soon after, though. It wasn't that much. I think I rented it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I am not sure, but for some reason, I think I did watch this live. This might have been one of the few times I actually talked my dad into renting a WWF show. And because I remember him watching it with me and him being kind of blown away by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember watching this live, and I very much remember my buddy's face, the look that, like, when he just saw the bump, I kind of, like, looked over, and we were just like, holy shit. We had a bunch of people in the room, but I just remember my one buddy's face, and it was just, I mean, it was crazy. And like you mentioned, it's one of the most famous matches in professional wrestling history.
Yeah.
And if you showed it to me, like, right now, that spot when he gets thrown off the cage, I would still kind of get, like, you know, the goosebumps. Not like Rock when he came back in 2012, but you know.
Yeah, it got 4.5 stars in the Observer.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's definitely a match of the year contender. I mean, how can it not be?
Yeah. Funny enough, speaking of watching it live and stuff, I do remember, Justin, me and you have often talked on the show about like listening to the pay-per-views through it being scrambled back in the 90s and stuff like that. I do remember, I can actually remember the night this pay-per-view aired, because the one match I remember like listening through the fuzz was the first blood match between Kane and Austin. And I remember, for some reason, I can like vividly remember I was playing basketball in my front yard and I kept running inside, like listening to the pay-per-view. And I remember like later that night listening through when Austin lost the title and being like stunned. But I don't remember listening to this one at all for some reason. But it was the one everyone was talking about afterwards. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. I was there the next night when Austin won the title back from Kane. That was in Cleveland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was in Pittsburgh, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I do want to ask you, you brought up Foley's biography, Kyle. And I'm not sure if Justin's read it or not. I've read it a couple of times. It's one of my favorite wrestling books ever.
Yes.
And he is very steadfast in that book of saying that when he went through that cage the second time, it was unplanned. The cage gave way. Do you guys buy that, Kyle?
Mick's always been a pretty honest guy. I mean, I think the story was, I always thought the story was that it was supposed to like not give the way it did. Like it was supposed to kind of be like a slow thing where he would kind of like roll off of it into the ring. And that's what the story I always understood. But I mean, obviously, you agree that bump is way worse, than the first one, because the first one, if you watch it in slow mo, he does. I mean, obviously, I'm not doing it, but he kind of like guides himself as safe as he can. The second one, man, he just like, the cage just gives and he just drops like a rock into that hard ring, and I can't remember if they had changed the rings yet. Like for WWE, I think they were still using that really fucking hard ring they always used.
Yeah.
And then it's even worse because the chair that was at the top of the cell falls down with them and like hits him in the face.
Mm-hmm. That's what makes it so bad.
Yeah.
It still would have been the same ring because they didn't change it until Austin and McMahon at the Valentine Massacre.
That's right.
You're correct. And that was right before WrestleMania.
99, yeah. The thing is, most people that point to this being planned is after the spot when Foley's laying in the ring, you can see zip ties visible on the mat. So apparently something was planned. Whether or not it was that the cage was supposed to break or not, I don't know. But I think, like you said, Kyle, the thing that makes the spot so crazy is the chair coming down and hitting him in the face. I mean, that, to me, that's what makes the spot just even crazier. So even if falling through the cage is what was planned, I don't think that was planned. So
Jerry Lawler going, "That city's dead," is a great call.
Now if he throws him up on the other side, that's it, he's dead. If he throws him up
yeah,
on the other
absolutely. So I mean, it's legendary. I have to put that at number 2. But I love the Michaels Taker match so much more.
So interesting that Shawn Michaels basically got to write the rules because he went first with both Hell in a Cell and the ladder match. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, there's a lot of people who say, if you watch Michaels Taker that we're talking about here, or Shawn and Michaels Ramon and that ladder match at WrestleMania 10, if you watch it with like the 2019 shades on, you're like, well, I've seen more spectacular than this. But you've got to put yourself into 94, into 97. What those matches meant in those respective years was so much more, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, than maybe crazier bumps you see in the modern day. Mm-hmm. It was just so, both matches were just so far beyond what at least I could conceive a professional wrestling match could be at that time. Whereas now you just kind of expect these bumps to take place.
Yeah.
It's like the old Jim Cornette thing. Guys are taking, bumps that are 3 times worse for 1/3 of the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah, I think this may have actually been the first, when they switched over from Coliseum to WWF Video, I think this was like the first one maybe that I found in the store. I think even WrestleMania 14 was kind of hard to find. I actually vividly remember buying King of the Ring 98 in a Sam Goody at the mall. I think, so it was probably like 3 to 4 months or so after the show aired, I saw this for the first time. And yeah, you can't undersell that enough, Kyle. It was so crazy for the time period. And that's why it was so memorable.
Talk about overpriced. Sam Goody, jeez.
Is Sam Goody even around anymore?
No.
Yeah, long out of business. Okay, so we wanted to go, before we break down and just kind of give out our top 4, the Mount Rushmores that we have here, let's talk some underrated and overrated Hell in a Cell
I just want to ask one quick question, send this around the horn to you guys. Did the 2 matches that we just talked about, Michaels Taker and Mankind Taker, did they set a quote unquote impossible bar to follow? I mean, if we're both saying, if we're all 3 of us are saying these are like our top favorite 2, is there something to that?
Mr. Joint, go ahead.
I feel like, I mean, I don't understand why anybody couldn't at least equal the first one. I mean, that, you know, a lot of that's just great storytelling.
Well, I think you answered your question. Great storytelling is few and far between in modern WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the bigger problem is Undertaker Mankind setting a precedence for just, you know, the danger aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that's what almost kind of ruined Hell in a Cell for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just expect it, you know. And
yep.
I'm going to mention this when we talk about another Foley Hell in a Cell. I always kind of got the vibe watching it that the crowd was sort of waiting for him to do something like that again. And it kind of actually hurt the match a little bit. You know, to Justin's point, I kind of think it's like almost the TLC matches, how it kind of forced the performers, and you know, the promotion should honestly know better, that it's still about storytelling, but you know, it became more like, well, stunt show.
Mm-hmm.
Over storytelling, and you're not going to match the bump ever that Mick Foley did here. You're just not. And,
nor should you try.
No, yeah, exactly, and that's true. I mean, even when Mick, you know, did another big fall, you know, through the cage into the ring, they obviously gimmicked the ring. You know, a couple years later. So I think there is something to the quote impossible bar to follow. Justin has it with, hey, if you tell a great story, you put it in the right situation, you can do it. But expecting modern WWE to do that, I think, is foolhardy.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. Yeah, I would agree with you guys. I think the I guess technically the third one, the Undertaker Mankind one, I think that set the bar high as far as everyone expecting a car crash in these matches versus you know, great psychology and a well worked match like Michaels Taker. So I think it took a while for the expectations to change for this match, because after that, and that replay, I mean, it was on the Raw intro back then of Mankind coming off the side of the cage. I mean, that's the kind of thing everyone was looking for after that. And I think it just overall changed the expectations for what people were looking for in a Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, and again, I respect the hell out of Mick Foley, you know, kind of taking inventory of his situation and being like, hey, I want to give the fans something. I want to have something that people are going to remember. I understand his line of thinking, why he did that. Because as I said, there was no storyline entering that Mankind Taker match. This was not, you know, the thick of their feud in 96. You know, that wasn't part of this at all. This was just like, hey, we got 2 guys, we're going to put them in Hell in a Cell, and one of them's banged up. And Foley's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going above and beyond. So I understand why, and I always respect effort, but I do think he unintentionally set an impossible bar there.
Yeah. All right, so overrated and underrated Hell in a Cell matches. I think there's probably several we could point to here. Kyle, you've got a lot of them here in our show notes, and I know there's one in particular as far as the overrated side.
Oh, I waited for this part of the program.
I've been waiting all night for this one, baby. Here we go.
So I just rewatched this match a couple hours ago to confirm my belief, because I don't like to be wrong on this show. I don't like to lead our listeners astray. I like to give them the truth. So at the risk of sounding like Dan Deerdorf here, remember, fans, a first down means 10 yards. Allow me to state the obvious. By overrated, it's a match where I'm just lower than the general consensus by a considerable margin, whether you want to measure that in star ratings or just public opinion, general opinion, what have you. So my pick for the most overrated Hell in a Cell match is Triple H and Taker at Mania 28.
The end of an era.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you why here. I thought, we talked about this with some maybe recent NXT main events. It was very self-indulgent and just even like, you hate to use this word, like just masturbatory at times. Just because the participants are acting like everything is so epic and the announcers keep telling you everything is so epic, it don't make it epic, folks. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'll go here. I think this match is guilty in many ways of some of the same stuff Hogan matches were rightly criticized for back in the day, in terms of just like ridiculous overacting. Your response initially to that is my choice for an overrated Hell in a Cell.
I got 2 words first.
Or they suck it.
Dan Deerdorf?
Cue the ass man voice.
That is a name I didn't ever expect to hear on Top Rope Nation. Dan Deerdorf?
I will never forget. I was watching a game, like one of the final games Dan Deerdorf was commentating. It may not have been one of the final ones. It may have been just one of the last couple of years. If you don't know who Dan Deerdorf is, he was a commentator for many years for the NFL. And I was watching this game. I'm like, God, Dan Deerdorf is so bad. And then I went on Facebook, and my buddy and like a buddy of mine just had written on Facebook, it's time to send Dan Deerdorf to the glue factory.
Oh,
and I can't tell you how much I like that person now. He actually officiated my wedding.
Solely because of that comment?
No, not solely, but it was definitely raised him up a notch at the time.
No, but anyways, actual response to that. I liked the match okay at the time. I did think it was a little overrated. I watched this one on pay-per-view. I had some people over. I remember watching it at my first house. And, your buddy Dave Meltzer gave it 4 3/4 stars.
Like I said, overrated. Because to me, I think there are some people, and maybe it's you guys, and, I love you. Okay, both regardless. I'm not going to run from that. It is not a contender for my Mount Rushmore. It would maybe sneak into my top 10, but it is not in contention for a Mount Rushmore, and it's certainly not a 4 3/4 star match.
I agree with that. It's definitely not 4 3/4 to me either. I'd probably put it around the 4 mark. I haven't watched it in a long, long time though, but I do recall thinking even at the time that people are overrating a little bit. Justin?
I loved it at the time. I can't say I've really rewatched it recently, but I wonder if that spot with the super kick into the pedigree kind of made it more than it actually was, just because that was a big, like, is this it moment, to end the streak.
Set me up, Justin. Keep setting me up. Just keep serving it up. Keep lobbing it, baby. That softball is so fucking big right now. In front of
Jack
my
Daniels
face.
is setting in now. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh my God. Because I have that like as this bolded note here on my own page. So
you go right ahead.
Go ahead.
Buddy.
There it is.
Okay.
He's lobbed the softball. Okay. Here it comes.
To be positive here, to reiterate something you guys said, the live crowd liked this a lot. In the Citrus Bowl, they did like it a lot, and it was the culmination of a 4-year storyline between Taker and Michaels and Triple H. Love the Memory Remains playing when they lower the cage. That was a nice touch. The Metallica song, I believe the only decent song on Reload, for the record. Now let's get into the negatives. There's a lot of this match that just makes no sense to me. You have early on Triple H constantly telling Shawn to end it. And I really don't know why. there wasn't that much punishment given, especially compared to other cell matches of the past. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Maybe that's where the PG era hurts. Don't know. But then you have Michaels kind of showing compassion to Taker during all this. Like, hey, man, I should just end this. And Taker's like, no. And I'm sitting there like, why would anyone end this match at this point? Well, why is this happening? And then even more confusing is Taker turns on Michaels for no good reason. Despite the fact Michaels was showing him compassion, puts him in the Hell's Gate. Now, Justin mentioned it. It does lead to the memorable spot of Sweet Chin Music Pedigree Nearfall, which is the highlight of the match. But then Triple H turns on HBK for no reason and throws him out of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some good near falls during that, not just the Sweet Chin Music Pedigree situation, but there were some others that the crowd really bought. And, because Taker had the streak, that was a big deal and did have heat, I'll give you that. But, HBK was, really bad with the overacting here. He was just so conflicted because it was the end of an era. My God, these two men, I just don't know whether to count or run to the hospital and get a doctor. It was just kind of really cheesy and bad, I thought. And of course, it's Triple H and Undertaker in the 2010s, so the match went too long. And they went way past the peak where they were having. Those near falls had the crowd into it, and then they went 5 minutes too long. So to me, I think this is the most overrated. Based on, you said it, Meltzer gives it 4 3/4. I think there are a lot of people who might consider this in their top 4. For me, no way.
Well said.
I thought so.
He's heated. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Justin hit something nail on the head there. He said, I haven't really gone back and watched it. And for me, when I was formulating my top 4, that's kind of what I looked to. And frankly, there aren't a lot of matches in recent WWE history that you go back and watch multiple times. I mean, I think about how many times I watched that Michaels Taker match, or even Michaels Foley, and a couple others I'm going to mention here in a little bit. This isn't one that I think maybe I watched it a second time at some point, but not recently, not in the last 5 years, that's for sure. And so it's hard for me to put it in the top 4.
2 hours ago, I think, was the second time I've ever watched it. I remember having a couple people over at the time, too, that quote-unquote casual fan.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't that into it, as you think. You would think that would be the kind of fan who would, love this, and, the undercard, who are these loser small guys, Oh, but it's Triple H and Taker. Here we go. I remember I had a buddy very vividly said he liked Punk Jericho on that show better than Triple H Jericho or Triple H Taker. I don't know if I agree with that take necessarily, but someone else said it in the room live.
Mm-hmm.
Casual fan.
So the other overrated one you got on this list, Kyle, and this one I would highly agree with, because even at the time I didn't think it was much to talk about, was the 6-man at Armageddon 2000. This is one that Dave Meltzer gave 4.5 stars.
We're just sticking that.
I'm sorry, but
right,
man, that is insane for this match, because I remember I was 16 years old at the time, and I wanted to see everything pro wrestling, and this was a match at Armageddon that I was not even remotely going out of the way to see. I didn't watch it live. This was the 7th Hell in a Cell match in WWE history. And they hadn't had one since earlier that year, which is one we're going to talk about in February that year. We get to December of 2000, Birmingham, Alabama. 6 guys in the ring at the same time. I think this was it was the only multiple, beyond a singles Hell in a Cell, other than that tag one that was on Raw, the second ever Hell in a Cell. Otherwise, they had all been singles matches up to this point. And I didn't think it was that great at the time. I'm very surprised. I didn't have the Observer at the time, so looking back now, I'm very surprised he gave this one 4.5 stars. Justin, do you remember watching this one for the first time?
My big takeaway with this one was the realization that the spot, the Hell in a Cell danger spot, just it couldn't go on, because the Rikishi thing was kind of corny for me. And I guess, I don't know, it just kind of put a damper on the Hell in a Cell until, they had to change it. They had to get it away from the dangerous spot and more into storytelling, which, did they do that or not? I don't know. But Yeah, no, I was kind of like with you guys. I was just a little disappointed by the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Kyle.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head, Justin, with, corny. I have in my notes the word contrived. Because the end of this match was just way too contrived. You had Vince trying to tear down the cell, so they bring out the truck, which is just a setup for Rikishi taking the bump off the top of the cage. And you're right, they were just looking for creative ways to do stunt bumps at that point, rather than tell a story. 2000 WWF is one of the best in-ring years ever, by the way, the promotion ever had. I have seen what I consider the best matches of that year multiple times. And this is just not up there with them. This is not up there with, TLC. It's not up there with Triple H Cactus at the Rumble. It's not even the best Hell in a Cell match of the year 2000, quite frankly. We'll probably touch on that later. It's not as good as Triple H Jericho Last Man Standing. It's not as good as the Iron Man between Triple H and Rock. So, to me, 4.5 stars means match of the year contender. This was not a match of the year contender. So that it made my overrated list for that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk underrated Hell in a Cell.
Well, do you guys have any other, is there any other matches that you feel are overrated between the two of you?
To me, the one that stood out was this one. This was the one
Okay.
I went to right away. So outside of that, I don't really have one. Did you have one, Justin?
No, I don't even know if, outside of, I think, the 5 or 6 we'd say are, really good, if anybody really even talks about them.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few of them that are rated 3-ish stars in the Observer that aren't the greatest ones. So, yeah.
I guess, to be overrated, it has to be something that a lot of people want, that, gets maybe that high rating. And to be fair, I think Meltzer's probably, I wonder if he would walk that rating back now if he read it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have never really heard a lot of other people considering that among the best Hell in a Cell matches. That's I was just stunned when I saw that rating, and I went back to watch it, and I was like, no. But, to me, Triple H Taker, like I said, I think in terms of overrated, that fits the bill because, you guys just kind of mentioned it, that a lot of them are proper. A lot of the ones that wouldn't be on our Mount Rushmores, I think, are properly rated. For instance, let me just throw it I don't think anyone really likes the Michaels Triple H one from Bad Blood 04.
Mm-hmm.
No one's ever said that's a good match.
Didn't go long enough.
Oh, still. No one is going to shed tears, nor should they, for Chris Redacted anymore. But he beats them both in successive months, and then they main event over his title run. So, talking about masturbatory.
As we talk about the underrated matches, a couple things jump out to me. Now, everyone's going to talk about The Undertaker as probably the king of the Hell in the Cell matches, just because when you look at the Mount Rushmore, I'm assuming he's going to appear several times on all of our lists. And we've already talked about twice
know two,
for sure, and probably a third time on most of ours. So I think it goes without saying Taker is probably the king of the Hell in the Cell match. But there's some other names out there too that you could throw in there. Now, you just mentioned Shawn Michaels and Triple H, so Shawn had the greatest one with Taker in 97, but outside of that, you can't really point to a great one with Shawn. Shawn and Triple H worked Cody and Ted DiBiase Jr. in 2009 in the Hell in a Cell, and it was an okay match, but not fantastic. So I can't call Shawn Michaels the king of the Hell in a Cell. But there's a couple other guys who have had some really good Hell in a Cell matches that could lay claim of, outside of The Undertaker, they're right up there as far as the master of the Hell in a Cell. And one of them's Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar has had a couple really good matches in Hell in a Cell. You look, Kyle, you mentioned it, the one with Taker in 2015, and another one with Taker back in 2002. Now there's a general theme there, The Undertaker as well, right? But another guy you could point to, Dave Bautista. Dave Bautista is going to be on my list. Spoiler alert. He's had some pretty good Hell in a Cell matches too, with, again, The Undertaker and Triple H. So when we look at underrated, Kyle, you had Batista and Triple H from 05 on your list. What do you have about that match?
Yeah, and then I guess we should give the old devil his due too. Triple H obviously deserves. I mean, Triple H. It's funny because when we go back to that overrated one, Triple H Undertaker, it was very much built as like these are the two guys who have been in the most Hell in a Cells, and so again, that sounds great on paper. I just don't think it played out well. I mean, and some of it had to do with their age at the time, but whatever. Let's get to a real good Hell in a Cell match involving Triple H, ironically, against Batista, Vengeance 05. Couple months ago, I think it was, I mentioned SummerSlam 2013 as being right below WrestleMania 10 as having the best 1-2 combo of matches on a pay-per-view in WWE history. Vengeance 05 is in that discussion, too, for having two great matches. The Triple H Batista Hell in a Cell, which we're going to get into, and then Michael's Angle 2.
Oh, yeah.
Vengeance 05 is a strong show. And I remember why that was. You guys remember? ECW One Night Stand had just happened. Mm-hmm. And the crew was motivated as fuck.
I like how you said that.
Yeah, to turn it up. So I watched Triple H again because I wanted to confirm my belief. I always liked Triple H Batista, and it was funny. Justin was sending us some lists during today, and apparently someone had this as their number one, which is even higher than I'd go. I have it as my number 3. Spoiler alert, it makes my Mount Rushmore. But I watched it again last night, and I loved this storyline. I think it's something I've gushed about on the program before. I'm gonna come in hot here, guys. I think Triple H Batista, this feud with kind of the whole breakup of Evolution, and then this was the blow off Hell in a Cell. I think it may have been the last great long-term planned out main event storyline WWE did.
Wow. That is a hot take.
In the sense that it's an idea they came up with. They were not pushed in a direction by the fans like Daniel Bryan. Okay. This is something that they wanted to do. They executed it to perfection, and it drew money. Remember, WrestleMania 21 did a hell of a number. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't John Cena at the time. John was in a semi-main position against JBL. That was solely on the back of Triple H Batista. Watch the TV from that period. People loved this Dave Batista. And the segment where he turns, where he gives the thumbs up and then thumbs down, I think is one of the great Raw segments.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I just absolutely loved this storyline. And this was the blow-off. So, a couple things on the match. Triple H, the challenger, they never lost to Hell in a Cell. So you got to consider him the favorite over Batista, who's never been in one. Simple but effective. Something that got me right into this match from the start. Them very audibly calling each other motherfuckers at the start of the match. Okay, that's going to win me over pretty quickly. I enjoy that. Jim Ross, who we've been critical of recently on this program, he has this great public service announcement where he's like, I want to be up front, folks. This may not be for the younger members of the family. It's very violent. I just thought it was amusing. JR.
For everybody out there, just so they know, we start every podcast before we start recording by calling each other motherfuckers.
Yes, we do that. That's how we fire each other up. Yeah, we're just like, motherfucker, are you ready? Yeah. And this match had believable near falls. That's something that I think I criticized a lot about modern wrestling. They do these early 2 counts, like this is gonna be the fucking finish. So these guys waited for a while to start going for pinfalls, and that made it better. And I love the finish of this match, where Batista picks Triple H up for the Batista bomb, but Triple H grabs the sledgehammer as he goes up, and he goes to try to hit Batista with it, but Batista drops him for the powerbomb first and gets the pin. That is a great finish. Mm-hmm. So I love this match, and it made my Mount Rushmore.
Same. I'll go into some reasons why when we get to the Mount Rushmore, so I have something to talk about. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, though, for sure. Any others that we think are underrated that we want to talk about?
Well, I would say, if we're looking at Sports Illustrated, HBK Undertaker is quite underrated as being the 6th greatest Hell in a Cell match of all time. So that is very underrated.
What a bad article that was.
You will find, if you look up top Hell in a Cell matches, you will find some very bad articles. I was shocked at what I was reading earlier today.
The other one I'd point out is What Culture has a top 10 that doesn't even have Taker Mankind on it. That was unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, it has Triple H and Jericho, which is actually
number
bad.
9.
Which is actually bad. Hey, but that was from that same. We just did Backlash 2002 for Top Rope Classics, Ryan, and we were talking about how Triple H, the presumed smartest man in wrestling, he got out politicked by the whole Hulkster during that period. So of course, what do we the fans pay? What price do we pay? Well, let's bring Jericho back to do a big job to Triple H in a boring Hell in a Cell match. Sad.
Yeah, I think that kind of would lead into a good discussion too, real quick, on the worst Hell in a Cell matches. Because you mentioned that being a bad one. I think everyone's going to agree on the worst one. You can go to WrestleMania 15 for that one.
Yeah.
Woof.
Yeah.
That one is so far below the rest, it's like shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's almost like the better discussion is what's the second worst.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we could do a whole show on WrestleMania 15 and kind of what a letdown that show was. But I think that's
not a good WrestleMania.
No, and that's kind of indicative of it. That was not a good match. I mean, you're talking about that was only the 5th Hell in a Cell match in WWE history at the time. There hadn't been that many, so people were kind of excited for it. But man, if there was excitement, it didn't live up to it. The hanging thing with Boss Man was kind of cringeworthy. Yeah.
Heel versus heel?
Yeah. Not the best. I felt bad for those fans in Philadelphia that night.
I think the second worst might be Taker Kane 2010. If you haven't seen it, it's just hearing Taker versus Kane 2010 should kind of tell you all you need to know.
Yeah. You're right. That one was not good either. What else? There was one in like 06 with I think I mentioned it earlier, Shawn and Triple H against Shane, Big Show, and Vince McMahon. Not a great one.
That's not great, but it's at least
Nash and Triple H also 03.
Yeah. Where they had to have Mick Foley as the ref to entertain us.
I can't remember who it was. One of my friends I was texting about we were going to do this show, and they're like, "Oh, well, definitely got to get Nash and Triple H on that list," in a joking manner, because that was a not good match. Yeah.
That Michaels Triple H one from Bad Blood 04 that we mentioned, that's a bad one. It's really boring. Justin joked, "Oh, it wasn't long enough." Holy shit, was that match too long?
How long did that match go, anyways? I'm looking here.
I think 50 minutes.
47 minutes, 26 seconds.
Oh, my goodness. Also, the second Bad Blood pay-per-view, right? Or no, the second Bad Blood pay-per-view. Technically the third, I guess, if you go back to In Your House. Yes. Bad Blood 04. Not good. Okay. So, do we think that having a pay-per-view now themed around the fact that it's called Hell in a Cell, we know every year when we're getting the Hell in a Cell matches, there's scripted isn't the right word, because all of wrestling's scripted, but it's all like, it's very routine, I guess I should say. Very routine that every fall now we're getting the Hell in a Cell matches. Does that take away from the match in your viewpoint, Justin?
Capital Y. Yes. Period. It's dumb. You have to shoehorn a match in to Hell in a Cell, which should be, a match that's a culmination of a storyline, which is part of the reason why, like, they've been basically forgettable for years now. And, part of the other problem is that it's PG, and, a lot of us who grew up with Hell in a Cell, it's kind of a bloody, dangerous match, and now they're just kind of meh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You hit it on the head. I think it's just too routine now. Kyle?
Yeah, Justin hit my key points. It's something else, too. Multiple cell matches on the same show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whether it's because of, you've got a brand split, you've got 2 world titles, or having men and women. And by the way, before you all leap, you want to jump on me. for the record, we'll talk about this in the coming weeks. I think only the women should have it this year in 2019. So get off my back, jackasses. Yeah, the shoehorning it is so apropos. Just that's a great term. I had jam it in because it's October, but Hell in a Cell, it's basically a cage match from the 70s on steroids, right? What was a cage match? It was the ultimate blow-off for a long-term program, not just because it's October.
Yeah.
Hell in a Cell used to be a draw. It's funny. We all laughed and made fun of the Triple H Kevin Nash match at Bad Blood 03. That match drew. Because, and it wasn't because of Kevin Nash, I'll tell you that much, okay? It was because Hell in a Cell still mattered in 03. Look at the buy rates. That match did a shockingly good buy rate for a Raw-only pay-per-view in 2003. Compare that number to the other Raw-only pay-per-views of 2003, and that was the first Raw-only pay-per-view, by the way. But like you're going to see, Hell in a Cell still matter then. It would be so much better served if you use the gimmick organically during at whatever point in the year a particular feud called for it. And the proof's in the pudding. I just mentioned it. The Hell in a Cell used to be a big draw. Now, when it became a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in the pre-network era, so we're like 09 to 13, those shows didn't draw well. And to Justin's point as well, I'll piggyback on it, very few remember the matches themselves. I mean, let's look at the list on Wikipedia, none of which are on my Mount Rushmore, for the record. I mean, do any of you remember the Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt, Hell in a Cell from 2015?
Nope.
No.
I don't either. Do either of you remember Roman Reigns? We love Roman here on Top Rope Nation, so I hate to pick on him. But do we remember Roman Reigns and Rusev in 2016?
Vaguely. Not much about the match itself, though.
So, John Cena and Randy Orton, not surprisingly, had multiple Hell in a Cell matches during that run, both 2014 and 2009. Yeah, which was 2009 was the first year they went to the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and they did 3 on that show. Yeah. Randy Orton and Sheamus in 2010, anyone?
There were some of looking at this list, there's some I didn't even know existed. And granted, I was a fair weather fan there for a while. Like I had no idea about Mark Henry and Randy Orton. They have a Hell in a Cell match. Yeah. Did not know that.
The old Hall of Pain era, Mark Henry.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
No, I just think that it is totally, we've talked about this before, and Ryan, I can't remember the term you used. You were searching for, you didn't want to say scripted, you were looking for a term. The term I always use is homogenized with WWE year over year. We've talked about this before. And it's just like Elimination Chamber, Money in the Bank. Yes, just like Hell in a Cell, those have been successful gimmicks in the past that the crowd gets up for. But when they all kind of just run together.
Yeah, it's just routine. Just becomes routine.
It's just like, okay, well, it's February and somebody won a Rumble, so we've got to establish the other title match. So we're just going to have that whoever we want in that spot win an Elimination Chamber. Money in the Bank. I mean, what's your favorite Elimination Chamber match? What's your favorite match from the Money in the Bank pay-per-view? Again, similar to Hell in a Cell, all the Money in the Bank matches I remember are when it was part of WrestleMania in the early years.
Yep, same.
Not the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. I couldn't. Elimination Chamber, it was before it became a yearly pay-per-view, are the ones that I lean towards.
But I would still say, though, at least Elimination Chamber and Money in the Bank are generally, at worst, entertaining. I mean, if they're not good, they're at least entertaining. Whereas, these Hell in the Cell matches, they're forgettable and generally just okay, maybe.
Yeah, they run together. So the only one post. So I remembered, obviously, they did Sasha and Charlotte, and there was it New Day and Usos had a tag team one. And those were like the first instances of giving Hell in a Cell to the women, and a tag team. I remember those. There were a couple. I remember they did Orton and Daniel Bryan in 2013, but I struggle to remember these. The best one, though, post 2009, is Brock and Taker in 2015.
Yeah, I'd concur on that. I think
Same.
I think it just comes down to kind of what should be one of the golden rules in wrestling is that when you remove unpredictability, pro wrestling sucks. When it becomes routine, pro wrestling's not interesting. And when you've made Hell in a Cell, which has always been such a cool match, routine every October, it's just not memorable anymore. I mean, I think when we look forward to things like the new Wednesday Night Wars, and we gushed about NXT last week because it was something out of the ordinary, right? It's something new, and these Hell in a Cell pay-per-views, they've just become expected. You're getting multiple Hell in a Cells a year at the same time. It's not a blow-off for a feud. It's taken away from the match. We could talk about other things, which I think are more trivial, like they changed the cage color to red, and they made the cage bigger at one point in time. I don't think that really matters so much. You wrote in our show notes here, Kyle. It's more about the story being told. But I think you pigeonhole yourself so much when the story being told is, well, you can only do the Hell in a Cell match in October. So that's what it comes down to.
For the record, I think let's talk about the modern product. It fits for Sasha and Becky given how they booked the first match. Mm-hmm. They had the brawl that went everywhere, and that makes sense. But why are they putting Seth and Bray first time out in Hell in a Cell other than it's the Universal title match and the pay-per-view is called Hell in a Cell? There's no reason to do that. Yeah. You're actually just kind of watering down the one match where it works. And here's another point I'd like to make. Okay, I called it overrated, the Triple H Undertaker WrestleMania 20 match, and I'll stand by that remark. But a lot of people remember that one. It's one of the few people remember in the last 10 years. It didn't happen at a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, folks. It happened at WrestleMania. And what was the one Hell in a Cell, although we don't want to admit it, and the match itself stunk, to be honest. It's probably towards the bottom of Hell in a Cells. What's the one Hell in a Cell in recent years that actually demonstrably raised business?
How far back are you going here?
Yep, Justin had said it. Shane and Taker.
Yeah,
remember
mm-hmm.
they were
ticket sales picked up. Yep.
Yeah, they were afraid that they weren't going to do the record in Cowboys Stadium. They announced that match, and there was a big uptick in sales after that. Again, now that was not a long-term story by any means. It was actually desperation booking because a lot of guys were hurt, but it shows that Hell in a Cell can still be a draw when used appropriately. But is this standalone pay-per-view? That's for the birds. And we should talk about the PG stuff, too. Justin touched on this. How much of an effect has that had on Hell in a Cell, in our opinion?
I mean, a little bit, because we talked about the blood. Shawn bled in the first match. We've got all the violence in the Taker Mankind match with the thumbtacks, and I know it wasn't planned, but the chair to the face of Mankind and his tooth in his nose and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the kind of stuff longtime fans are accustomed to. So yeah, when you go to no blood, I've always had a problem. I don't think every match should have blood. I'm not barbaric by any means, but in the right circumstance, blood can add a ton to a match. Look at Cody and Dustin at AEW, So I think if you're going to buy people in a Hell in a Cell match, for Christ's sakes, the match has hell written in it. You need some blood. I mean, you just do. You look at the classic cage matches from the old NWA, WCW, like the Flair bloodbaths, that I do think the PG era has hurt it because it does take violence out of the factor. And if you're going to be talking about, again, a match called Hell in a Cell, and you're going to separate that from your other cage matches, it does have to go to another level for people to buy it as something special, I think. Mr. Joint?
No, I think you said that perfectly. I guess, if we're stuck in this mode where we have to have this pay-per-view, let this one pay-per-view be, not R-rated, but let this one pay-per-view have blood.
Yeah.
Is, I guess, the only thing I would throw out there.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, you posed the question.
The only thing I'll say to the contrary is this. And this is why I firmly believe that it going to a yearly theme pay-per-view is a bigger negative than PG. A couple underrated cell matches, not on my Mount Rushmore, but ones that I liked, were Batista Taker, Survivor Series 07, and Edge Taker, SummerSlam 08. And those were the first two of the PG era.
True.
And they were both, in both instances, it made sense storyline-wise to go to Hell in a Cell. And yeah, maybe the blood hurt it a little bit, but, I still think the bigger factor is the yearly pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right, let's reveal our lists. Let's get to the Mount Rushmores, our top 4. I'll go first. So, as we all mentioned, Taker, Shawn, Bad Blood 97, automatic. That's my number 1. Mankind, Taker, King of the Ring 98. And then got a little harder. But my third is Batista, Triple H, Vengeance 05. And I said I'd save a little of this for later when I talked about it. I just think that match is the match that really solidified Dave Batista. That is the match that made him. Triple H put him over clean. The finish was awesome, as you mentioned a little bit ago, Kyle. You're talking about a multiple year storyline, going back to Evolution and everything. I think that belongs up there. And then in the 4 spot, I had a really hard time. I had like 3 matches. I was kind of rotating in and out. And even as the show was going on, I was still thinking about it. Came down to Cactus and Triple H at No Way Out 2000, Edge Taker at SummerSlam 08, and Brock Taker at No Mercy 2002. I got to go with Cactus Triple H at No Way Out 2000. Now, I do remember at the time watching it, and it wasn't as good as the Royal Rumble match the two had. I still think that was the month before, a much better match. But as far as Hell in a Cell goes, you're talking about Mick Foley just, a year and a half after that King of the Ring match with The Undertaker. People were hyped as hell for this match. It was looked at the time as kind of like Mick Foley's farewell. Despite the gimmicked fall, it was still memorable. I mean, everyone watching at the time knew they were probably going to do something like that because that spot had been talked about so much from the King of the Ring match, and it was very clearly gimmicked. And I do remember at the time it kind of took a little away from me, and maybe that's barbaric to say. But overall, I mean, like the psychology of that match, it's a really, really good match. So I have to put that one in my number 4 spot. Kyle, your comment?
No, I was going to say that match. I'll save it for me because that match is also. It's funny. I think we may wind up with the exact same Mount Rushmore. I'll let Justin go first.
Okay, Justin.
Everything you said, mine are my 3 and 4s are flip flopped. In Batista Triple H only really made mine today. I didn't remember watching it when it actually happened, so I actually just watched it earlier today and loved it. Thought it was fantastic. In everything you said, it made Batista. The Triple H and Cactus Jack, I just remember, Foley walking down saying, when they said it was going to be Hell in the Cell, and he says it's not going to be against Mankind, it's going to be against Cactus Jack, and he rips open the shirt, and that was one of the coolest freaking moments, in Raw history. That was so cool.
And Triple H overselling something that's like kind of silly at face value was great. It totally made it.
Oh yeah. And I'm with you. The match, like in a way, kind of disappointed with, the gimmicky, but it also worked. And we can't forget that, this was all to make Triple H as a singles champion. It started with the Royal Rumble and kind of went on to WrestleMania 2000, but this was good. I liked it. It's a classic. Cactus Jack.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Kyle.
Okay. Yep. This is, I
We're
guess,
all on the same page.
This is kind of crazy how we're all on the same page. So, yep. Number 1 is definitely Michael's Taker. Number 2 is definitely Mankind Taker. Number 3 is definitely Triple H Batista. And number 4 came down for me to 2 matches. Triple H and Foley from No Way Out 2000 or Brock Taker from No Mercy 2002. And it really is a coin flip deal for me. So it's funny, neither of you guys mentioned this. what kind of hurts Triple H and Foley in retrospect, at least for me, is that obviously, it was Foley's career on the line. And then he comes back at WrestleMania. It was like this, I remember the whole emotion of Foley having his career on the line. It's like, oh, fuck, are they going to have him win the title here? And it very much made it like, oh, man, he might actually win. And they didn't. It was a really emotional deal. And then they kind of just, reneged on the storyline. And he showed up at WrestleMania and wrestled anyway in a very forgettable performance. So now that said, I remember going into it, I was looking way more forward to that match than I was Brock Taker in No Mercy 02. Ryan, we shared our mutual disgust for 2002 Biker Taker when we did the Backlash 02 show for Top Rope Classics.
Oh, yes.
And I remember being pissed when they went to the non-finish at Unforgiven the month before. And so for me, like, watching No Mercy 02 live, I was like, I want Brock to just destroy him. And I watched this just before we started recording. This was the last one I watched. Dude, Brock Lesnar in 2002 is like a totally different wrestler. This guy, the way he moves was insane. We kind of talked about that too in the Backlash 02 show. Holy shit. It was just a joy to watch. And the blade job from Taker is insane. Give credit where it's due. He did go above and beyond and put Brock over huge in that match, which he should have done. So it's a coin flip, but I'm going to go Triple H and Foley, which, by the way, was that the first instance of barbed wire? Did they do barbed wire at the Rumble too?
They did at the Rumble. Yeah.
Okay. So, but it was definitely the first instance of fire because they're at the top of the cage right before he gets backdropped and goes through the top. He sets the 2x4 on fire, wrapped in barbed wire. So that was a first there. So I'm going to go with that just because I was more into the storyline going in. But, man, Brock, it's a real coin flip with that Brock Taker No Mercy 02 match, which Paul Heyman, hats off to him, blades in that match.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a long time. I'll probably rewatch it, but I remember it being awesome. And I knew I was gonna have that on my list and possibly in the top 4.
Mick Foley was only 34, by the way, at No Mercy 2000. Believe it or not, that
younger than I am right now. Crazy.
Yeah, Jim Ross mentioned that. And I was like, what? He was 34 here. He was like moving like he was 64. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not fair. He was still moving pretty well. But I kind of teased this and to put a bow tie on this discussion with, did he and Taker set an unattainable bar for every other match to follow? That match did kind of suffer at No Way Out 2000 of everyone just sort of waiting for Cactus to take a big bump or them to get out of the cage. Now, to the credit of how the match was laid out, when Cactus throws the steps through the cage and it goes through, and Triple H ducks and it goes through the cage, the crowd immediately picks up on what that means and that the match is going to go outside. It's a really good reaction.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this has inspired the listeners to maybe use that network subscription, go back, watch some of these old matches. We love talking classic wrestling, but also putting a modern twist on it as we prepare for 2 more Hell in a Cell matches. Next month, you got Seth and Bray Wyatt, right? That will be for the Universal title. And then we've got Becky and Sasha. So that will be the 43rd and 44th Hell in a Cell match in WWE history. We'll see how those ones rank. But that's our list. And so if you enjoy listening to us break down classic wrestling, again, check out the Patreon page where we do it every month with Top Rope Nation Classics. Get your free t-shirt this month, patreon.com/Top Rope Nation. And Kyle, that brings us to our final segment. It is time for the Kyle Ross I Love This Sport deep dive.
All right, we're going deep on this one. It doesn't. I don't think it makes. We've talked so many Hell in a Cell matches. I think we'll just go in a completely different direction here. A match I watched a few weeks ago. Got to give a shout out to Segunda Caída, a resource I always use. Their ongoing match of the year list. I always just kind of look for things that maybe I missed, and I found this gem that was near the top of their list, and God, did I love every iota of this match. We've been gushing about Walter a lot on this show recently. And so him and old Tim Thatcher, Ringkampf, had teamed up in WXW against Yuki Ishikawa and Shigehiro Irai. Hope I got that name right. I actually was not familiar with them at all. I just saw the match. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go into this blind, see how I liked it. What a match this was. It was on March 7th, 2019. It can be found on Daily Motion if you want to Google it. It was a tag match where no matter who was in, they were working submissions. I've really not seen a match like that before. Where it's that they're not necessarily working on one guy. It's not like an old school Crockett tag where, they isolate Ricky Morton and the heel team takes turns working on the knee. It's not like that at all. No matter what combo of wrestlers is in this match, they're constantly working subs. It's very interesting, and I highly recommend it.
Very nice. Guys, if you check it out, let us know your thoughts. You can tweet us at Top Rope Nation. You can email us, topropenation@gmail.com. We will read your emails on the show. And as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, check out the Patreon page, get your free t-shirt. If you're subscribing, or you should be subscribing, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever podcasts are found. You can follow Justin on Twitter at JustinJoint. That's JOYNT. He's at TRP Kyle for Kyle Ross, and I am at Ryan Droste, DROSTE. The show is on Instagram at Top Rope Nation, Twitter at Top Rope Nation, and on Facebook, look us up, Top Rope Nation Wrestling Podcast. You will find us there as well. Any parting comments, guys? Mr. Joint, I'll throw it to you first.
Bring blood back.
Simple, effective. Kyle?
I did actually blade 30 minutes ago, and we have a problem, so we might need to call a doctor.
Took too many aspirin ahead of time.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, it's been fun. Let us know what you think of the new format. This is what we're going to be doing every week. A brief news segment, a topic of the week, and Kyle's deep dive of the week. Hope you all have a good weekend. We'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.